He was one of the most successful comedians in the world. His shows were watched in America, Japan and more than 140 countries. Millions laughed with him, millions were made from him. And then after more than 20 years, it ended in minutes. Benny Hill walked into an office, still one of television's biggest comedy exports. He walked out with the world that he'd built around him suddenly gone. And that may be the real tragedy of Benny Hill. Not simply that he died alone, but that the one thing which gave his life purpose was taken away from him. Cruel. Benny Hill was born Alfred Hawthorne Hill in Southampton in 1924. His parents were close and loving, but his father was strict. Benny grew up in a household where money was respected and not wasted. They were not destitute, but they were careful, very careful, and that way of living seemed to have stayed with him for the rest of his life. Because years later, when Benny became a wealthy man, he lived like almost an ordinary neighbour from down the street. He did not buy expensive clothes, he did not drive a car. In fact, he never drove at all. And he used buses, he walked long distances, he avoided taxis. His flat was simple, a television, a couple of couches, a comfortable bed, nothing grand, nothing flashy. His one real luxury was travel. To some people that seems strange. A man with millions in the bank, living as though every pound still mattered. But psychologically, it makes sense. Childhood lessons do not always disappear when success arrives. Sometimes they become part of the way a person feels. For Benny, not spending money was not necessarily misery. It was a habit. It was an identity. It was a world he came from. As a young man, Benny became fascinated by entertainment. He watched comedians and noticed something important. They often topped the bill. They got the biggest laughs, they earned the best money, and they attracted attention. To a young man from a strict, careful background, comedy must have looked like a doorway into another life. Applause, freedom, success, and perhaps escape. But Benny's first steps were not easy. When he appeared on stage in the north of England, the audience did not take to him. He was a southern performer, and they did not warm to him. According to the story, he was given a slow handclap. Not applause, not even silence. A slow, painful rejection. For many performers that would have been enough, and for a while it did stop him. But Benny adapted. If he could not make it as a performer, he would write. He took a pile of comedy scripts to a producer and told him not to just read the one at the top. Choose any of them. Pick one from the pile. He believed in his material. The producer read the scripts and liked them, but then came the turning point. He did not want someone else to perform them. He wanted Benny. Within a short time, Benny had gone from failed stage actor to rising television personality, winning recognition in the mid-1950s. That matters, because Benny Hill was never a man just pulling faces on television. He was a writer, a craftsman, a man who built comedy from the inside, and once television gave him the right performer, he flourished. By 1954, Benny's fortunes had changed dramatically. The struggling comic who had once faced failure on stage was voted Television Personality of the Year. At last, Britain was beginning to take notice. The Benny Hill Show became one of Britain's most successful comedy exports. The sketches, the characters, the chase sequences, the music, the visual humour. It travelled borders because you did not always need to understand every word. You understood the rhyme, the silence, the mischief. By the late 1980s, Benny was far more than a British television comedian. He was a worldwide phenomenon. In America, audiences embraced him. In Japan, he became hugely popular. Then he travelled to the United States. He was reportedly surprised by the level of attention he received. He had lived simply in England, yet across the Atlantic people treated him like a major star. There's something very revealing about that. Benny had become globally famous, but he did not seem to live like a man who needed to prove it. He earned vast sums. His estate was later reported as around £7 million, yet one biographer said by the time Benny's will was read, Many of the friends in his world had already died. As a result, much of the money passed to his nieces and nephews he had barely known. It's a strange detail, sad, but not because Benny lacked money. Sad because money had never really seemed to be the centre of his life. The work was. Off-screen, Benny was far more complicated than the fast-moving comic figure people saw on television. Those who worked with him often described him as kind, affable, and simple in his tastes. But he could also be shy. One of the Hills Angels later recalled that if a new woman came onto the set, Benny could become nervous. He preferred familiar people around him, people he trusted, people who knew the rhythm of the show. That tells us something important. On screen, Benny looked completely in control. Off screen, the controlled world of the studio may have helped him feel secure. The same faces, the same routines, the same structure, the same purpose. And that makes what happens later even more painful. Benny never married, but there were women in his life. One of the most interesting was Annette, the Australian actress, later known for Randall and Hopkirk Deceased. She and Benny were romantically involved in the early 1960s. At one point, Benny proposed, but as she began to respond, he seemed to sense the answer might not be yes, and he turned the moment into humour. He laughed it off. Years later, Annette was left, unsure whether he had truly meant it, although she believed he probably had. That is a very human moment. Humour can be a gift, but it can also be armour. If the answer was yes, wonderful, but if the answer was no, you can pretend it was only a joke. For Benny, comedy may not always have been how he reached people. It may also have been how he protected himself from rejection. I actually met and interviewed Annette André myself years ago at Pinewood Studios at the event connected to Bob Baker, who had just sadly passed away. And that small personal connection made Benny's story feel even more real to me.
Anyway, I think he was a wonderful man. I wish I'd had an opportunity to work even more with him.
Because behind the famous sketches was a man who could make millions laugh, but seemed to keep himself part of a careful hidden secret. Then came the moment that changed everything. By 1989, the Benny Hill Show had been seen around the world. It had made enormous money. It had entertained generations. But television was changing, comedy was changing, attitudes were changing, and Benny's style was increasingly seen by some as old-fashioned. People always argue about that. Some saw it as harmless slapstick, others felt it belonged to another era. But whatever you think of the show, the way it ended was absolutely brutal. John Howard Davies, the former head of entertainment at Thames Television, later described how Benny was told the show was over. After more than 20 years, Benny was called into an office. He apparently thought at least there might be a lunch, a conversation, some dignity after decades of service. But he was told it wasn't necessary. The meeting was brief, and just like that, the show was finished. Dennis Kirkland, a close friend who would later find Benny dead, described what the loss of the show meant to him. He likened it to a mother losing her babies. That line explained the heart of the show. Because for Benny, the programme was not just a job, it was his world. He wrote, he planned, he rehearsed, he performed, he worked with familiar people, he knew the rhythm, he knew who he was there. Then suddenly there was nothing. No scripts to write, no studio schedule, no next recording, no cast waiting, no reason to prepare, no reason to diet, no reason to walk into that familiar world that had become Benny Hill. For someone whose identity had been built around work, that kind of loss can be devastating. We have to be careful here. It would be unfair to say that the cancellation caused Benny Hill's death. Life is not that simple, but those close to him believed it affected him deeply. The spark seemed to go out of him for a time. He became depressed, his weight increased, his health declined. And perhaps the most damaging of all, the routine that he'd held in his life was gone. There were attempts to bring him back. An American special was made. There were reports of interest in new work, But by then, Benny's health was under serious strain. He had heart problems. He was advised to have a major treatment but refused. At one point, he went into hospital using the name Mr. Martini. When asked why he gave the old advertising line, anytime, any place, anywhere, even when he was seriously ill, Benny was still using humour, still deflecting, still turning discomfort into a joke. Shortly before his death, he went to see Louise English in the West End play. He wanted a photograph taken with her, something that seemed unusual. She later remembered him as emotional and reluctant to leave. We cannot know exactly what Benny was thinking, but looking back, it feels painfully poignant, almost like a farewell, whether he knew it or not. In April 1992, Benny stopped answering the phone. His television was heard playing. Concern grew. Dennis Kirkland eventually went to the flat and had to climb a fireman's ladder to get in. Benny had been dead for around 2 days. He was 68 years old. One of the most touching details is what Dennis did afterwards. Benny's hair was sticking up, and Dennis asked if he could smooth it down. Just one final act of care. No grand speech, no drama. Just a friend straightening Benny's hair, making him look right again. That is the detail that stays with you. A man who had spent his life making the world laugh had finally left it quietly in the simple flat that he lived in without any fuss. And nearby, reportedly, was paperwork connected to a new series, a possible comeback, a new beginning, waiting for a signature that would never come. Ben Hill was buried beside his parents, Ellen and Alfred, at Hollybrook Cemetery in Southampton. But even after death, the strange mythology around him continued. In October 1992, only months after his burial, his grave was desecrated. A contemporary reporter stated that the grave had been dug up and his coffin smashed open. Police believed robbers were looking for jewellery after local rumours claimed valuables had been buried with him. The rumours were false. Of all the wealthy celebrities to imagine buried with treasure, Ben Hill was one of the least likely. He had spent his life avoiding extravagance. After police inspected the scene, the coffin lid was replaced and the earth restored. A concrete slab believed to be 1 foot thick was later placed over the grave as a security precaution. It is a bizarre and sad final irony. A man who cared so little for possessions was disturbed after death by people looking for valuables that were never there. So what is the real story of Ben Hill? It is tempting to call him a lonely clown, but I do not think that is quite right. He had friends, he had colleagues who cared about him. He had women in his life, he travelled, he laughed. He achieved extraordinary success. He became famous in Britain, then America, then the world. He'd made millions of people laugh, but the heart of the story is not loneliness, it's purpose. Ben Hill did not seem to need a mansion. He did not need expensive cars. He did not need designer clothes. He did not even seem especially interested in spending the fortune that he'd earned. What he needed was work, a script to write, a sketch to shape, a studio to enter, a laugh to chase. A familiar world where he knew exactly who he was. And when that world was taken away in a brief meeting after more than 20 years, something inside him was badly wounded. Not because he lost money, not because he had lost fame, but because he lost the rhythm of his life. Ben Hill spent decades giving laughter to the world, and perhaps the saddest part is that near the end, the world had not completely finished with him. There were still people who wanted him back. There was still interest. There was still a possibility of another show. But for Benny, it came too late. The contract was there, but the man who needed the purpose most was gone. And here, beside his parents in Southampton, rests a man who proved that success, fame and money were not always enough. Because sometimes what keeps a person alive inside is much simpler. A reason to get up, a place to go, and work that makes them feel like they still matter. Oh, Look at that. Of course, we expect that. We've got a little milk float there. Thank you for all the funny moments, Mr. Benny Hill. Yeah. Don't know what that is. And there was some fresh flowers there. But look, isn't that lovely? Benny! Love you, and I still love you now. Still watching now, Benny. Thank you ever so much, my friend. It's a privilege to be here. Okay, let's read the stone. Oh dear. I don't know, I get a bit sad sometimes. I don't know why I do when I'm doing this job, but I do. And he wanted to be buried there, look, next to the church, the entrance, and that was the nearest I could get. But the fact was that there were some raiders, because they thought his gold had been buried with him. So they ended up putting a concrete top on to stop, you know, that happening again. And we've got to remember, he was on TV, he was I think he was voted on one of these polls the 17th most popular entertainer. And he also used to get figures like 21 million viewers. Astronomical, isn't it? Let's get in nicely. And there we are. It says, cherished memories of a dear husband and father, Alfred Hawthorne Hill, who fell asleep on the 6th of May 1972, aged 78 years. And of his beloved wife, Helen Florence, who fell asleep the 10th of February 1976, aged 81, reunited. Mum and Dad. And of course we've come down and we've got also Southampton's Benny Hill, born Alfred Hawthorne Hill, 1924 to 1992. Comedian, son, father and friend, our boy eternally. God bless. Oh, isn't that sweet? So there we go. And this is the moment when we get the MotorHome Beat Beat flower out. I think I'll put it down this end. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? That's no good, is it? Not really. Not really. I think what we'll do, we'll put it there, look. That's it. That's it. That's good. I'm struggling with that one, but I want it to be straight. Hang on. Who's this behind me? Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh! It's one of the Hills Angels! Are you the ones that used to run after Benny?
I love Benny. I love Benny.
You love Benny, don't you?
Yeah. I love Benny in Greece.
Yeah, you do. She's from Greece, aren't you? And
I'm from Greece, and we had his program about 10 years.
yeah,
80s.
it was very popular. A lot of
Every
fun.
single night we was watching Benny, Benny Hill.
It was a very popular program in a lot of foreign countries, wasn't it?
Of course.
Yeah,
course.
but I think it was sweet, don't you? It was a sweet guy.
It was very cute.
You know, he always
Nice
reminded me, I don't know if you agree, of Oliver Hardy because of that sweetness. You know, with the tie, he used to float the tie and Benny.
And I am like him in few times because I'm talking about Chinese, the British language.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I'm like him.
Yeah, because
I mime him.
yeah, he used to do that Chinese guy that got the words and he say, "You stupid sod," and he got the words wrong, hadn't he? And you do
I
that
do the
sometimes.
same.
Yeah. It's because she's Greek, of
Benny.
course. Yeah, but we've got to remember we can't speak Greek, so you've got one up on us. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love Benny, didn't
I
we?
think he loved the German language a lot because he was acting like German.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I
he
never,
was
never thought about
acting.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. So you've been a big fan and this is your moment, huh?
We love him.
Yeah, there we
All
go.
in Greece.
Yeah, definitely.
Love you, Benny.
Beautiful Benny, wasn't he gorgeous? Even the world so much fun. But the thing is, we've got to learn from that in life, money and possessions don't really buy you happiness. They buy time and they buy you some ease of life. But the thing that makes life worthwhile is having a purpose and your relationships. Those things together, yeah, and that's what he lost when he lost his job. So build those into your life and you'll be a lot happier person. I think that's what we can learn from Benny today. I hope I represented him well. He was a beautiful soul, wasn't he? So if you enjoyed the film today, don't forget to subscribe, give me the thumbs up and the comments. I love the comments, I really do. So look, I'll see you all very soon on another film. Take care of yourself and have a lovely day. Bye from me, Ellen. See ya. Take care.